Hello, welcome to the second Town Hall Candidate Forum. I'm your moderator, Jeremy Thomas. I am a new assistant professor at ISU in the Department of Sociology, Social Work, and Criminal Justice. And I'm actually new to the area, having just moved here with my wife and 2 children. And I'm glad to be with you tonight. Part of my research involves the interplay of religion and politics and society, and so this is an excellent opportunity. Tonight, as we have time, I want us to consider 4 perhaps a little bit more specific areas of interest to our local community and to Southeast Idaho. I want to discuss some issues with regard to gay rights, with regard to fire protection, with regard to child care regulation, and with regard to environmental issues. We do, I believe, have opportunity for the audience to call in, and I think there should be a telephone number at the bottom of the screen, and we will be taking some questions from the audience. I'd like to begin by having our candidates introduce themselves and tell us who they are and what office they are running for, and then we will proceed from there. Can we start over here?
Okay. Hi, I'm John Bischoff. I'm running for 3rd District County Commissioner, and I did a little of a bio last week, so I'm not going to go too deep into it other than just what I said.
Okay, John, thank you.
I'm Ken Andrus. I live in Lava Hot Springs. I'm the incumbent legislator in District 28, Seat A. I'm seeking re-election for that seat.
And I'm Bob Croker. I'm running for District 29A as a representative to the Idaho House of Representatives.
I'm Idaho Lorax. I am a Green Democrat, but apparently the only Democrat here tonight. I am running for House of Representatives, State Seat District 29, Seat A, and I'm glad to be here again.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Talk about environmental issues. I think we regularly hear in media, both local and statewide, and perhaps even nationally, about environmental issues that are pertinent to this part of Idaho. And a lot of questions about activities and situations that have happened in the past, disputes about who should pay for cleanup and this kind of thing, who's responsible for what, and broader kinds of questions about what the appropriate role of government should be in regulating these kinds of things. The question I have for our candidates tonight is essentially, from your perspective as a candidate running for office, what do you feel are the most pressing environmental issues that perhaps you have an idea about how to deal with in a pragmatic manner? We know that there are often very big issues that are hard to know how to get at practically, but what are some of the kinds of things that are perhaps addressable, and what would you suggest doing about them?
Now, there's other things, and lately in the news is the fact that the FMC cleanup just happened. Of course, that's in Power County, so not really the Bannock County Commission candidate's major task in life. However, we have to remember, some of that slag that they're burying now under 3 feet of earth was brought into this county. And it was brought into this county and just literally spread out all over the place. Not what I'd call a smart move. The least we have to do is figure out about that slag, what we need to do about it. Right now, I look at the slag and realize that that it was enriched in everything other than phosphates, because the phosphates were pulled out. Therefore, the lump of what's left, everything else that was in it, is now more populous than it was. You take something out of a whole, the rest obviously has more concentration. Now, when I look at that, I see some uranium in there. Now, uranium kind of has a personal effect, or personal mental effect on me, because back when I was a little bit younger, I joined the Navy. The Navy, of course, used depleted uranium rounds in what we called the CWIS, close-in weapons system. That, of course, was breathed by anybody in the that was on the decks soon after those guns fired. And of course, That happened to be my general quarter station during the Gulf War. The depleted uranium is one of the alleged causes of what we call Gulf War syndrome. Gulf War syndrome is a bad combination. Respiratory diseases, they can't even ever point out what GI problems there are. Chronic fatigue syndrome. The list is horrid, and the list is stuff that I am not only in danger of, has actually somewhat affected me. I'm not telling you I've got Gulf War syndrome or anything like that. What I'm telling you is I've seen it. I've seen it happen in real life. And we've got that stuff sitting in our driveways. This is not cool. We need to get that stuff out of the county and under that 3 foot of soil over at the FMC site. Put it back at the FMC site, put it under the 3 feet of soil, or better yet, put it somewhere where it's not going to do anybody any damage. I like the idea of putting it in Power County, back in Power County myself.
Okay. Bob, thoughts on the environment?
Sure. You know, I think everybody has an opinion on just about anything, and I'm not sure that I have anything deep with respect to the environment, but I do know that years ago when I was building homes for a living, we had to put money in escrow to deal with problems that surfaced after the home was built, and it needed to remain there for 5 years. So I understand some of this notion of escrow money. I believe that anyone that is coming into the community as a business or an industry that deals with hazardous material needs to obviously have some serious scrutiny with respect to plans for handling those materials. And I believe that an escrow account to handle cleanup is something that would be quite appropriate.
Idaho?
Environment, huh? That's my cup of tea, ain't it? Well, as John was alluding to, we got serious problems in this community. I do like the escrow approach that Bob was mentioning of, because we actually had a $4 billion discussion to put on the table for not only serious cleanup in Bannock County of the uranium materials here and all its daughter products, etc., but also for looking at the health effects and escrow for if you end up getting cancer, then you got your name down here. You're going to be someone that's going to have some compensation for that. Because this material does have tags on it. It is labelable. It is, you can get the right equipment. You have to go to INL or INL, and they have the ability to say, yeah, this tumor is caused by this radioactive substance in that person's body, whether it's leukemia, whether it's a tumor or in any tissue in your body or your lungs. And so that capability exists. I mean, our technology has advanced to that. And if our only approach to thing is just cut it out and have really expensive medical bills and not look at prevention, that's a serious issue. I mean, I didn't come really necessarily do this, but here's a shirt that they can't take this one down. I mean, these signs have gone up around town. I have 6 EPA oversight studies to clean up and protect people here in this community. I have a 7th going on for Bannock County. There are many other locations that I have perused just to try to make the awareness and apply for them to help those communities, but they need to help themselves to a certain extent. Just everywhere I go and everyone I talk to knows someone who has cancer, died of cancer. And this is all trackable, traceable. The Radiation Compensation Act of 1990, the Downwinders Act as it was originally called, now includes this material. The federal government on do not tell policy is still enacted in this community, and it's enacted by local government people. Every 2 weeks they submit to the city council to deal with the safety of workers of community, and every time they table those things. They table the study sessions. They don't want to let the community know what's killing them, and they're going to be ultimately responsible in legal lawsuits, as there have been many already, all settled out of court, of course, for those who have money for attorneys. If anybody ever asked why we have so many attorneys in this town? Because they've been suing the large corporations who have made billions and hundreds of billions of dollars from profits from this material and are now even gone. The FMC has been gone basically for 14 years, I think, or going on 13, 14 years. And we still don't want to tell that the city of Pocatello is the same material as there. People keep taking the signs that when they're put up, hey, here's the phone numbers, here's who to call. It's right on there. Okay, this one you can't take. Okay, it's on me. But basically, we try the best we can to inform people. Some people are in denial. Some people don't believe it. Some people have been listening to the lies from as far as the Environmental Protection Agency of the Western Office.
Well, let me follow up on that and ask, so if we want some kinds of environmental cleanup to take place, of course, remember I'm new to the area and so I don't quite know the history, who should pay for it and what kind of obstacles stand in the way of cleanup taking place?
Okay. Well, the libertarian solution is the guy who polluted is the guy who owes everybody who he polluted money to make them whole. That's pretty much standard. That's pretty much standard libertarian philosophy right there. As in, you have your property rights, but if you impinge on somebody else's property rights, it becomes a civil crime or a civil liability issue, and the homeowner then has the right, if you will, to sue. So, well, basically at this point in Bannock County, one of the things we need to be looking at is we need to be looking at the fact that Power County allowed the FMC and the Simplot to go in and basically, because of FMC and Simplot, Pocatello specifically was one of the prime movers in why we have a Clean Air Act. In fact, in the 70s, there were two acts that Pocatello was the prime mover of, the Clean Air Act and OSHA, both of which were because of things that were going on in the Simplot and the FMC areas. The whole point here is that clearly at this point, the pollution has come into Bannock County, and it came into Bannock County from Power County, who literally basically pushed it on the tribes to allow those particular plants. So it's a civil liability issue. And a civil liability issue, of course, means that the polluter pays, and pays because of the fact that the court has to get involved. They usually pay quite a bit more. And I can't argue.
Bob, who should pay?
Well, you know, I'm not a libertarian, but I certainly support the notion that the person that commits the crime ought to pay for the crime. That's a lot easier said than done, however. If we are talking about protecting people, then I think the government needs to step in and provide something until a time is determined that the perpetrator can clean it up, or it's just not going to happen. But we do need to protect people when it comes to environmental issues, especially pollution. We don't need things to sneak up on people, to surprise them, which then, of course, creates health problems with now gets into the cost of health care, and so it just gets bigger and bigger. It's just a snowball effect. So obviously the answer is the person who commits the crime pays for the crime, but we cannot let people go unprotected. Something has to happen. And again, that's one of those things that's a lot easier said than done.
Okay, Idaho, quickly tell us who should pay.
Well, obviously, I agree with that. Those who did the polluting did it. It's complicated because I would say Simplot didn't. I always protect them in a way and say, well, they were ignorant to some extent. FMC was a weapons contractor. They knew what this material was right from the beginning. They withheld information from people, did not tell people, allowed it, and okay, they were the ones responsible for allowing it to be distributed in Pocatello because their pile of it, which they were hoping to sell at the time, or actually to extract uranium from and other valuable heavy metals, fell through because the price of electricity kept going up. And so there's a $10 billion request we have now for not only the escrow, but the medical and cleanup, thorough, proper cleanup with protocol in this community. And that's what my 6 sites are in Pocatello, is just pilot ones. It's not everywhere in the community, but hey, every once in a while, this whole big chunk of this community gets dusted with the same thing as you just walked into a nuclear fallout. And I've seen it happen in this town. One of those big dust storms just picked it up, and all from City Hall all the way up the mountain got contaminated again.
In the news recently here in the Pocatello City Council, we've heard some news that the council has been looking into drafting some anti-discrimination regulations and so forth to protect the rights of gay, lesbian, and transgender persons. I understand, being new to Idaho, that these are not regulations or laws that are necessarily seen in many cities across Idaho, but perhaps a few. I'm wondering if our candidates could address both kind of a specific perspective on what's going on here in Pocatello, but then also a little bit more broadly with regard to whatever area of Idaho you might be representing, and specifically asking, what are your kinds of views on these types of protections? And are they necessary, good for the community? Are they perhaps unnecessary? And additionally then, in your role as an elected official, how might you address these kinds of issues and other potential issues that might relate to the lesbian, gay, transgender community? Idaho?
Well, this is an area, of course, I've worked on a long time. In fact, in the past, like 15 years ago or so, there was organizations quite active in the Northwest, known as the Against Malicious Harassment. It was called the Association Against Malicious Harassment. Can't recall exactly its name, but it was against malicious harassment. And in that, it included a whole spectrum of abuses towards people, not just gay and lesbian, but different ethnic backgrounds. And so at the time, I think there was a lot of concerns about skinheads, and some of them had to be reminded, just because you have not much hair on your head doesn't mean that your political view or you're a nasty person or causing undue harm to people. But it is interesting that our laws here, at least is told to me in the city police here, that unless you're being harassed by a phone call or there was another avenue, it was very limited about what they will do. Otherwise, it's like bring it to civil court or something like that for damages. I myself have cases going to be pending and or have initiated of malicious harassment against myself. Coming from just very strange places to try to silence me in my campaign to save lives and bring awareness to people. And it's gotten to the point that just my name alone, which is like an ethnic background, is being attacked just because of my name. And so here I got people come and raid an art show because they see somehow I'm associated. And I have to call the police because they're harassing me. I come on a property and they call the police because I'm there, thinking that they can get rid of me. Of course, all of this has backfired, but it still continues. One of this is the old down Pocatello office there. And I go to the farmer's market and I tell them, if he comes there, have him arrested, call the police. For what? Nobody asks. It's like you have to have a reason. There should be a reason associated with what you're doing to somebody. And that's what we try to get at. Maybe it's their sexual inclination. Maybe it's their name. Maybe it's their ethnic group. Maybe it's the color of their skin. We often just go, your name. We assume you're a Native American because your name's Running Horse. Or we assume that it's Spanish or Mexican. Maybe not Spanish, but Mexican because it's Gonzalez or something. Or we assume you're a radical activist because your name's Lorax. These are all grounds for, or cases for malicious harassment against anybody like that. And so, yes, I get cases against people in this community for maliciously harassing myself and people associated with me. For what? Just because they don't like what we represent. And whether it's ethnic or social or gender, that's an issue. In terms of focusing on the gay and lesbian and other concerns, obviously I'm involved with those groups. You know, I don't want to see them have to get too particular, but we need more penalties involved with anybody who's harassing somebody, and more accountability. Just can't call up and say, you're now trespass, you cannot come on our property. Oh, well, why can't I? This is a 501c3 organization. Why can't I come on the property? Well, just because we don't want you to. You know, well, what's that about? And so I'm banned from school district office. I'm banned from Old Town Pocatello, Inc. I mean, for what? Can I challenge that? No, I have to go as malicious harassment as I get case after case of harassing me. And yeah, so communities need to reinforce those, bring them back to the surface, enforcing them. Yeah, the police here don't even want to enforce them. So
Okay.
I have to say yes for the group is trying to get more enforcement or more penalties involved. I support them, yeah.
But I think we'll continue then and move to a second specific topic that's been in the news this summer and fall, and that is with regard to fire protection. This year has, of course, been perhaps a record year for devastating fires, both in our immediate area and then across the state more broadly. And at a couple of points, I've heard in the local media some questions from various persons in the community about the effectiveness and the kind of connected to that, the appropriate funding of local fire protection efforts. And then also some questions regarding the appropriate interactions between, on the one hand, fire protection and law enforcement officials, and on the other hand, property owners trying to protect their own property. So I know there's a number of issues here that could be addressed, but I'm wondering if we could hear from the candidates talk about their perspective on fire protection, particularly, I suppose, in the local community. Is it funded adequately? Do things need to be done differently in any way? Or are the current situations adequate and so forth? So I hope, quick comment?
Yeah, I have to agree with both Bob and over here that yeah, more money will obviously solve problems, at least some think they will, but I also strongly agree with a plan, notifying homeowners, maybe with permit, awareness. It's an educational effort, and to emphasize that, because again, developers don't usually do that. I mean, they come in and develop this plan, but an individual homeowner should be somehow made aware of that if they're not in control in that, or somehow we can, because I know people in the fire department here, and they are very efficient, but this is a hap chance thing that happened this summer. I mean, it had conditions that went to it, but now coordination is, if anything, in terms of money, it's more coordination could help it deal with the disaster situation. When the catastrophe happens, do we got something in place to work that way? And we have other elements, not just fire, but toxic chemicals, you know, other materials in this community that are in Superfund site that can re-expose everybody. You've got to have a plan. And there are some plans in the works, but a lot of times people don't know even what they are unless you happen to be involved in that committee or things. So the more we can do that, the better.
Thank you. We'll move on to a new topic, and I don't know if our phones are working, but I hope that we could take a call, perhaps, if we have one. But in the meantime, let's go on to talk a little bit about some developments with regard to childcare regulation. I know particularly here in Pocatello, but these are issues that likely apply to surrounding communities as well. It's my understanding that in the last few months, the Pocatello City Council has acted to close 2 child care providers due to some violations of various sorts, and kind of heard that some persons in the community suggested that local government is perhaps overstepping its boundaries by trying to regulate what has, at least historically, been considered kind of a private sphere of domestic labor. And wondering if we could hear from our candidates about their opinions on the appropriateness of regulating child care facilities, many of which are in-home, and about the appropriateness of the government regulating what are often quite small-scale businesses that take place in these domestic settings. Idaho?
Well, again, I guess as my name reflects in some ways, I speak for the trees, but I speak for all those that cannot speak for themselves in that respect, and that's a comment or a phrase I do use. My educational background and consulting and education and teaching and helping goes from preschool to university. So yes, I have had considerable experience consulting and working with daycare centers and enhancing programs or safety issues. Always safety first. It's my slogan. So, I agree with Kent and Bob that, there is a, fairly adequate system in to a certain extent here. The sad part is in our economy, there are many people looking to somehow try to supplement their income, especially people who have children and they got one person working, what's the other one do? And that's what some of these situations have occurred here is they're trying to supplement their income. They're trying to maintain their home and somehow have a small business that can supplement. They have kids themselves usually. And so they're reaching out, well, I can do this, Well, it takes a little education. Sometimes what you do with your own children is one thing, but when you're getting another step to someone else's child, then it's a little bit more sometimes than you might be aware of. Kind of overlook things. So the role playing or getting into situations that just kind of get those experiences. Yeah, we're lacking some of that, but good educational programs can help on that. And there are agencies here that could help on that more, as well as, again, the things that we have in place when the situations occur. So far, I can't disagree with the decisions they made, but I feel sorry for how the events evolved.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Let's take our last 3 or 4 minutes here, and I'm wondering if each of you could give a 1-minute summary or so on what you think is the most important issue that you would work on as an elected official. Where does your passion or interest, what's most important that you might see actually accomplishing some kind of movement on? All right. Ida?
Well, I'm here as a scientist and educator testifying on behalf of the uranium contamination there. That's what brought me into this area mostly. And of course I get involved with many other things while I'm here. It's too bad that most of the people in the audience here or elsewhere do not have copies of what I testified here for. The newspaper will not print it. They won't print about the abduction of me to try to silence me by the railroad. They won't print the sting operation to try to shut me up by the county and the sheriff's departments. This is just case after case here going on, but we don't have a supportive newspaper. That's all I can say to that. And good luck. Hopefully we can get the $10 billion so we can bring people's lives back here worth living.
Okay, excellent. All right. Ida?
Well, I'm here as a scientist and educator testifying on behalf of the uranium contamination there. That's what brought me into this area mostly. And of course I get involved with many other things while I'm here. It's too bad that most of the people in the audience here or elsewhere do not have copies of what I testified here for. The newspaper will not print it. They won't print about the abduction of me to try to silence me by the railroad. They won't print the sting operation to try to shut me up by the county and the sheriff's departments. This is just case after case here going on, but we don't have a supportive newspaper. That's all I can say to that. And good luck. Hopefully we can get the $10 billion so we can bring people's lives back here worth living.
Okay, excellent. All right. Ida?
Well, I'm here as a scientist and educator testifying on behalf of the uranium contamination there. That's what brought me into this area mostly. And of course I get involved with many other things while I'm here. It's too bad that most of the people in the audience here or elsewhere do not have copies of what I testified here for. The newspaper will not print it. They won't print about the abduction of me to try to silence me by the railroad. They won't print the sting operation to try to shut me up by the county and the sheriff's departments. This is just case after case here going on, but we don't have a supportive newspaper. That's all I can say to that. And good luck. Hopefully we can get the $10 billion so we can bring people's lives back here worth living.
Okay, excellent.